Lila Hart's fingers trembled as she typed 3 words that would change everything. He hurts me. She meant to send it to her best friend. Instead, she sent it to a stranger, a worn-down HVAC technician who'd spent years learning that silence kills people slowly. Evan Brooks didn't hesitate. He left his sleeping son with a neighbor, drove across town in the middle of the night, and walked into that coffee shop not knowing if he'd find violence or heartbreak. What he found was a woman who'd been hurt in ways that don't leave visible scars, and a chance to prove that sometimes the right person shows up at exactly the wrong number. If you're watching from anywhere in the world tonight, drop your city in the comments below and hit that like button so I can see just how far Lila's story travels. Now let me tell you what happened when a mistake became a lifeline. The notification lit up Evan Brooks's phone at 11:47 p.m., pulling him out of the kind of half-sleep that parents of young children know too well. Never deep enough to feel rested, never light enough to be called awake. He'd been sprawling on his couch in boxers and an old Metallica shirt with a bleach stain across the logo, the television playing some true crime documentary he wasn't actually watching. His work boot sat by the door, still caked with the dust and grime from crawling through another condemned building's ductwork. His hands ached. His back ached. Everything ached in that familiar way that came from being 34 and working a body that felt 50. The phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. Evan sat up, scrubbing a hand through a hair that needed cutting 3 weeks ago. He squinted at the screen, reading the messages that had come through in rapid succession. He hurts me. I can't do this anymore. Bayside Coffee on Morrison. Please. Then a location pin. Evan's stomach dropped like he'd missed a step in the dark. His first instinct was to call back, but something stopped him. Some animal awareness that whoever sent this was either in immediate danger or having the worst night of their life, and a phone call might make things worse. His mind raced through possibilities. Wrong number? Obviously. But that didn't make the plea any less real. Someone out there thought they were reaching a friend, a lifeline, someone who'd come. He thought about ignoring it. He had every reason to. Mason was asleep down the hall in a bedroom with glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling that Evan had put up himself 3 years ago when his ex-wife decided motherhood wasn't what she'd signed up for. His son was 8 now, small for his age, with Evan's dark eyes and his mother's ability to ask questions that didn't have easy answers. Mason was the only thing in Evan's life that made sense. Everything else was just work and bills and the grinding sameness of days that blurred together. But Evan remembered being in trouble once. Really in trouble. The kind where you reach out and nobody comes. He'd been 16, drunk at a party that turned violent, too scared to call his parents, too proud to admit he was in over his head. He'd texted his older brother, just 3 words, "Need help, now." His brother had come. No questions, no lectures, just showed up and got him out. Saved his ass and probably his life. That was 18 years ago. His brother was gone now, died in a workplace accident when Evan was 23, crushed by machinery that should have been better maintained. The settlement had been enough to bury him, and not much else. Evan looked at the messages again. He hurts me. He stood up. He didn't debate it, didn't weigh the options, didn't think about all the reasons this could be a mistake or a trap or something that wasn't his problem. He just moved, pulling on jeans and boots, grabbing his keys and wallet. He knocked softly on his neighbor's door. Mrs. Chen, 78 years old, already awake because she slept in 2-hour increments ever since her husband died. She peered through the gap in the door, saw his face, and didn't ask questions. "Mason's asleep. I have to go help someone. Might be an hour, might be 3. Can you—" "I'll check on him every 20 minutes, Mrs. Chen said, already shuffling toward her shoes. "You go. Be careful." Evan kissed her papery cheek and ran. The drive took 14 minutes through streets that were mostly empty, just the occasional late-shift worker or bar hopper drifting through intersections. Evan's truck, a 2008 Ford with a passenger door that didn't match, and a transmission that made concerning noises when shifting into third, rattled through the night like it was personally offended by being summoned. He kept the radio off, kept his hands tight on the wheel, kept running through scenarios in his head. Domestic violence. Maybe she was trapped. Maybe she'd escaped. Maybe her partner was there waiting. Maybe Evan was about to walk into something that required police, not some random guy who fixed air conditioning for a living. He should call the cops. That was the smart thing. The safe thing. But he'd called the cops before, years ago, when he heard screaming from the apartment next door. They'd shown up 40 minutes later, by which time the screaming had stopped and the woman answered the door with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, insisting everything was fine. The cops left. The screaming started again 2 weeks later. That woman eventually left. Evan saw her one morning with 2 black eyes and a garbage bag of clothes, getting into a cab while her boyfriend was at work. She never came back. Evan never learned her name. He wasn't making that mistake again. Bayside Coffee sat on a corner that tried too hard to be trendy. Exposed brick, Edison bulbs, chalkboard menus with jokes nobody laughed at. Through the wide front windows, Evan could see maybe 5 people inside. A couple near the window, heads bent together over a shared piece of cake. A college kid with headphones on, typing furiously on a laptop that was probably worth more than Evan's truck. A barista wiping down the espresso machine with the kind of deliberate slowness that said closing time was coming and she was done pretending to care. And in the back booth, shoulders curved inward like she was trying to fold herself small enough to disappear, sat a woman alone. Evan killed the engine and sat there for a moment, hands still on the wheel, trying to see clearly through the glass. She had dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, wearing what looked like business casual. A blouse that had probably started the day crisp and professional, but now hung wrinkled and defeated. Her phone sat on the table in front of her, screen dark. She wasn't looking at it. She was looking at nothing, eyes unfocused, face blotchy in that particular way that came from crying hard and trying to stop. No one else sat near her, no man hovering, no threatening presence. Just her, alone, looking like the world had caved in. Evan took a breath and got out of the truck. The bell above the door chimed when he entered. The barista looked up with an expression that said, "We're closing soon. Please don't order anything complicated." The college kid didn't even glance away from his screen. The couple kept murmuring to each other, and the woman in the back booth. She looked up. For a second, they just stared at each other. Evan saw her register his presence, a stranger, male, walking toward her in the middle of the night. He saw her body language shift, saw her sitting up straighter, saw her hand move almost imperceptibly toward her phone. Fight or flight response, adrenaline kicking in. He stopped about 6 feet away, keeping his voice low and steady. "Hey, I got a message from this number about an hour ago." He watched her face cycle through confusion, then comprehension, then something that looked like horror. "Oh my God," she whispered. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God, that wasn't supposed to, I thought I was texting my friend Kara." "Okay," Evan said, staying where he was, not moving closer. "Okay, that happens. Wrong number. I get it. You came here." She said it like she couldn't quite believe it, like he'd performed some impossible feat. "You actually came. The message said someone was hurting you. I came." Her eyes filled with tears that she blinked back hard, jaw clenching with the effort of keeping it together. Evan recognized that fight. He'd seen it in the mirror plenty of times, the battle between breaking down and holding on, between needing help and being too proud to accept it. "I'm fine," she said, and it was such an obvious lie that Evan almost smiled. "I mean, I'm not in danger. Not physically. I'm sorry you drove out here. This is so embarrassing." Evan pulled out the chair across from her but didn't sit, just rested his hand on the back of it. "Can I sit for a minute? You don't have to talk to me. I just want to make sure you're actually okay before I leave." She studied him for a long moment, and Evan let her look. Let her see a guy in work boots and old jeans with calloused hands and no threat in his posture, just someone who showed up because showing up mattered. Finally, she nodded. He sat. Up close, he could see she'd been crying for a while. Her mascara had run and been imperfectly wiped away, leaving faint smudges under eyes that were red-rimmed and exhausted. She had the kind of face that was probably striking when she smiled. Sharp cheekbones, full mouth, dark eyes that held intelligence and wariness in equal measure. Right now, though, she looked hollowed out, used up. "I'm Evan," he offered. "Evan Brooks." "Lila," she said quietly. "Lila Hart." "Hi, Lila." He kept his hands visible on the table, kept his voice gentle. What happened tonight? She laughed, but it came out bitter and broken. I found my boyfriend in bed with someone else. My bed. Our bed. I came home early from a work trip, and there they were. He didn't even have the decency to look guilty. He just looked annoyed that I'd interrupted. Evan felt his jaw tighten. Jesus. He ran. Just grabbed my purse and ran. Ended up here because it's open late, and I couldn't go to my apartment. I live with him, obviously, and I can't go back there tonight. I was trying to text my friend Kara to ask if I could crash at her place, and I guess I grabbed the wrong contact, or my hands were shaking too much. Or I don't even know. Her voice cracked. And you came. A complete stranger came because I accidentally asked for help. You did ask for help, Evan said quietly. Maybe not from me specifically, but you reached out. That matters. Lila pressed the heels of her hands against her eyes, breathing hard through her nose. When she lowered them, her expression had shifted into something harder, more defended. I'm fine. Really, this is just... It's dramatic, I know. It's not like he hit me or anything. He just cheated. People get cheated on every day. I'll figure it out. He hurt you, Evan said, and watched her flinch at the words. Maybe not with his hands, but he hurt you. That counts. Does it? The question came out sharp, challenging. Because for the last 3 hours, I've been sitting here telling myself I'm overreacting, that I'm being dramatic, that it's not that bad. He told me, he actually said, that I was blowing it out of proportion, that I was being crazy for being upset, that if I'd been more attentive, more available, he wouldn't have needed to look elsewhere. Evan felt something cold and angry settle in his chest. He said that. Tonight. After you caught him cheating. He said I made him do it. Lila's voice had gone flat, emotionless, like she was reporting facts that had nothing to do with her. He said I work too much. I'm always stressed. I'm not fun anymore. He said he still loves me. He just needed something I wasn't giving him. He said if I could just understand where he was coming from, we could work through this. And what did you say? Nothing. The word came out small. I didn't say anything. I just left. And then I sat here thinking maybe he's right. Maybe I am overreacting. Maybe I should go back and talk it through like an adult, instead of running away and sending panicked messages to the wrong number like some teenager who can't handle her own problems. Evan leaned forward slightly, waiting until she met his eyes. Can I ask you something? Lila nodded. Are you safe? The question seemed to catch her off guard. Her mouth opened, closed. She looked down at her hands, at the cold coffee in front of her, at anything but him. What do you mean? I mean, if you go back there tonight, to your apartment, to him, will you be physically safe? Will he hurt you? Because if there's any chance he will, we call the police right now, and you don't go anywhere near him. He won't. She said it with certainty. Derek isn't violent. He wouldn't. Okay, good. Evan relaxed a fraction. What about emotionally? If you go back, is he going to tear you down more, make you feel smaller, convince you that your pain doesn't matter? Lila's eyes filled again. This time the tears spilled over, tracking down her cheeks in silent streams. She wiped at them with the back of her hand, frustrated. I don't know. Probably. He's good at that, making me feel like I'm the problem. Like if I was just better somehow, less stressed, more understanding, more flexible, everything would be fine. How long have you been together? 3 years. We moved in together after 8 months. I thought he was it, you know? The person I'd spend my life with. He said all the right things at first. He was charming and attentive, and he made me feel like I mattered. But somewhere along the way it changed. Or maybe it didn't change. Maybe I just finally saw what was always there. The little comments about my weight, my work, my friends. The way he'd twist conversations so I was always apologizing for things I didn't do. The way he made me feel guilty for having boundaries. She stopped, seeming to realize she was spilling her guts to a stranger. I'm sorry. You don't need to hear all this. I asked, Evan said simply, and for what it's worth, nothing you just described sounds like overreacting. It sounds like you've been in a relationship with someone who's been hurting you in small ways for a long time, and tonight was just the first time it was big enough that you couldn't pretend it wasn't happening. Lila stared at him. Who are you? Why are you being so nice to me? Evan smiled, tired and a little sad. I'm nobody special, just a guy who fixes broken air conditioning and raises his kid alone. And I'm being nice because someone was nice to me once when I needed it, and I remember how much that mattered. You have a kid? Yeah, Mason. He's 8. Best thing that ever happened to me, even if he asks me questions I can't answer and eats cereal for dinner more often than I'd like to admit. Something in Lila's expression softened. You left him alone to come here, to help a stranger. My neighbor's watching him. And you're not a stranger anymore. You're Lila, who's having the worst night of her life and needed someone to show up. He paused. Did anyone else show up? Your friend Kara. Did you get through to her? I haven't tried again. I was too mortified about sending that message to the wrong person. I've just been sitting here trying to figure out what to do next. Do you have somewhere safe to go tonight? Somewhere that's not your apartment? Lila nodded slowly. Kara will let me stay with her. She's probably asleep, but I have a key. She gave me one after Derek and I had a huge fight last year, told me I always had a place to crash if I needed it. I didn't want to admit I needed it. There's no shame in needing help, Lila. Isn't there? She met his eyes, and the vulnerability there was almost painful to witness. I'm 31 years old. I have a master's degree. I manage a team of 12 people at a marketing firm. I'm supposed to have my life together. I'm not supposed to be the kind of person who stays with someone who treats her like an inconvenience. Evan thought about the kind of strength it took to admit that out loud. Smart people stay in bad relationships all the time. It's not about intelligence. It's about hope. About wanting to believe the person you love is capable of being who they pretended to be at the beginning. You sound like you know from experience. My ex-wife, Evan said, surprising himself by offering it. We got married young, too young. Had Mason when I was 25. She left when he was 5. Said she needed to find herself, needed to live her own life, and needed to not be trapped by responsibilities she never wanted. I spent 2 years wondering what I could have done differently to make her stay. Took me a long time to realize it was never about me. Some people just aren't capable of showing up, no matter how much you love them. Do you still love her? No. The answer came easily. I'm grateful for Mason, but I don't miss her. I miss who I thought she was sometimes, but that person was never real. Lila absorbed that, nodding slowly. They sat in silence for a moment, the coffee shop settling into the quiet hum of late-night existence. The barista started stacking chairs. The college kid packed up his laptop. The couple by the window paid their bill and left, hands linked, completely absorbed in each other. Lila's phone buzzed on the table. Then again, and again. She looked down at the screen, and Evan watched her face go through a complicated series of emotions: anger, fear, guilt, resignation. It's Derek. He's calling and texting, asking where I am, saying we need to talk, saying I'm being unreasonable and childish. What do you want to do? I don't know. Her voice wavered. Part of me wants to go back, to talk it through, to see if maybe we can fix this. He's apologizing now, saying he made a mistake, saying he loves me. Maybe if I just... Lila. Evan kept his voice level, gentle, but firm. Can I tell you what I see? From the outside? She looked up at him, eyes wide and uncertain. I see someone who's been trained to doubt herself, to minimize her own pain, to prioritize someone else's comfort over her own well-being. And I see that person right now, in the middle of the worst betrayal of her life, already talking herself into going back to the person who caused it, because she's been taught that her hurt doesn't matter as much as keeping the peace. Lila's breath hitched. You don't have to go back tonight, Evan continued. You don't have to make any big decisions. But you also don't have to answer those calls. You don't owe him your immediate attention just because he's demanding it. You get to take space. You get to feel what you're feeling without him in your ear telling you it's wrong. He'll get angry if I don't respond. Then let him be angry. That's his choice. Your choice is whether you're going to let his anger control you. Lila stared at her phone, watching it light up with another call. This time, she didn't reach for it. She just watched it ring, then go silent. Watched the voicemail notification appear. And then, with a movement that seemed to take enormous effort, she flipped the phone face down on the table. I don't want to talk to him, she whispered. Not tonight. Maybe not for a long time. Then don't, But what if he's right? What if I am overreacting? What if I walk away from 3 years over one mistake and regret it for the rest of my life? Evan thought about how to answer that. You want to know what I think? I think you're not afraid of overreacting. I think you're afraid of being alone. And those are two very different things. The words landed like a physical blow. Lila's face crumpled, and this time she didn't try to stop the crying. She just let it come, ugly, gasping sobs that shook her whole body. Evan didn't tell her to stop, didn't try to comfort her with empty platitudes. He just sat there, a steady presence across the table, and let her break. The barista approached cautiously. Hey folks, I hate to do this, but we're closing in 5 minutes. Evan looked up. Can you give us just a few more, please? The barista glanced at Lila, seemed to recognize the shape of heartbreak, and nodded. 10 minutes. But then I really need to lock up. Thank you. When the barista retreated, Evan pulled a napkin from the dispenser and slid it across to Lila. She took it, wiping her eyes and nose, trying to pull herself together. When she finally spoke, her voice was raw. I don't know how to be alone. I haven't been alone since college. I go from one relationship to the next because being by myself feels like failing, like admitting no one wants me. Being alone isn't the same as being unwanted, Evan said. Sometimes being alone is the only way to figure out what you actually want, instead of just settling for whoever wants you. Is that what you did? After your ex left? Yeah, for about a year I didn't date at all. Just focused on Mason and work and learning how to be okay with quiet. It was hard as hell, but I came out the other side knowing myself better, knowing what I wouldn't compromise on, what I deserved. And what do you deserve? Same thing everyone deserves. Someone who shows up, someone who doesn't make me feel like I'm too much or not enough, someone who sees my kid as a gift instead of a burden. He paused. What about you? What do you deserve, Lila? She thought about it for a long time. I deserve someone who doesn't cheat on me and then blame me for it. Yeah, you do. I deserve someone who doesn't make me feel crazy for having feelings. Absolutely. I deserve... She stopped, voice catching. I deserve to not feel like I'm walking on eggshells in my own relationship. Yes, you do. Lila looked at him, really looked at him, and Evan saw something shift in her expression. Some small piece of understanding, or maybe just permission to believe what she already knew. I can't go back to him, not tonight, maybe not ever. Then don't. It's going to hurt. Yeah, Evan said honestly, it probably will. But you know what hurts worse? Staying with someone who makes you feel small. That kind of hurt doesn't heal, it just gets more familiar. Lila's phone buzzed again. This time she picked it up, looked at the screen. Another text from Derek, this one longer, angrier. And with visible effort, she powered it off completely. The screen went dark. I need to go to Kara's, she said. I need to get away from all of this and just breathe. Can you get there safely? Do you need a ride? My car's 2 blocks away, I can drive. Evan nodded, then reached into his wallet and pulled out a slightly battered business card. It said Brooks HVAC Repair and had his cell number at the bottom. He'd had them printed 3 years ago when he was trying to drum up side work, before he realized he barely had time to breathe as it was. This is my number, he said, sliding it across the table. The right one this time. If you need anything, a calm voice, a reality check, someone to tell you you're not crazy, you call me, okay? Lila took the card, holding it like it might dissolve. Why would you do this for me? You don't even know me. Because someone should have done it for you a long time ago, Evan said simply. Because you deserve to have people in your corner who don't have an agenda. And because sometimes the universe puts you in the right place at the right time to make a difference, and you don't question it. You just show up. She stood, and he stood with her. For a moment, they just looked at each other, two people who'd been strangers an hour ago, now connected by accident and honesty, and the kind of vulnerability that only happens in the middle of the night when everything else has fallen apart. Thank you, Lila said quietly, for coming, for listening, for not making me feel stupid. You're not stupid, you're hurting. There's a difference. She nodded, slipping the card into her purse. I should go. Kara's probably asleep, and I need to figure out what I'm going to say when I show up on her doorstep at 1 in the morning. Tell her the truth. Tell her you need help. I'm not good at that. Practice, Evan said with a small smile. It gets easier. They walked out together into the cool night air that smelled like rain and asphalt and possibility. Lila's car was indeed 2 blocks away, a sensible sedan that looked well-maintained and responsible, exactly like Evan imagined she was in every other area of her life. She unlocked it, then turned back to him one more time. If I call you, she said, will you actually answer? Or is this one of those things where you give someone your number to be nice, but secretly hope they never use it? I'll answer, Evan promised. Day or night, I mean it. Okay. She got in the car, started the engine, then rolled down the window. Evan, I know this was just an accident, a wrong number, but I'm really glad you came. Me too. He watched her drive away, taillights disappearing into the darkness. Then he got in his truck and headed home, where Mason was sleeping peacefully and Mrs. Chen was dozing in his armchair with the television on low. He thanked her, walked her back to her apartment, checked on his son, still curled up under dinosaur blankets, breathing slow and steady, and finally let himself feel the full weight of the night. He'd left his house for a stranger. He'd sat with someone else's pain. He'd offered help with no expectation of return. And somehow, inexplicably, it had felt like the most important thing he'd done in years. His phone was on the kitchen counter where he'd left it. No new messages, no calls. Lila was at her friend's place by now, probably crying and telling the story and trying to make sense of what happened. Derek was probably still calling, still texting, still trying to control the narrative. But Lila had his number now, the right one. And Evan had a feeling that this wasn't over. That wrong number or not, their lives had intersected for a reason. He didn't believe in fate exactly, but he believed in moments, in choices. In the decision to show up when someone asks for help, even when it's messy and complicated and none of your business. He believed in being the person someone could count on. And as he finally climbed into bed, exhausted and wired and strangely hopeful, Evan thought maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything. Lila woke up on Kara's couch with sunlight stabbing through unfamiliar curtains and the kind of headache that comes from crying yourself to sleep. For a disorienting moment, she didn't remember where she was or why her eyes felt swollen and her chest ached like something had been hollowed out. Then it all came rushing back. Derek, the woman in their bed, the coffee shop, the stranger who'd driven across town because she'd sent an SOS to the wrong number. She sat up slowly, taking in Kara's apartment. It was small but meticulously organized, everything in its place, throw pillows arranged just so on the armchair, the complete opposite of the chaos Lila felt inside. Her phone sat on the coffee table where she'd left it after finally turning it back on around 3 in the morning. The screen showed 47 notifications. 47 times Derek had tried to reach her while she slept. You're awake. Kara appeared from the bedroom, already dressed for work in a pencil skirt and blouse, dark hair pulled into a sleek bun. She carried 2 mugs of coffee and handed one to Lila without comment. I called in sick. Figured you might need company today. Lila felt her throat tighten. You didn't have to do that. I know. I wanted to. Kara settled into the armchair, tucking her legs underneath her. When you showed up at 1:30 in the morning looking like someone had died, I knew whatever happened was big. You want to talk about it, or do you need more time? So Lila told her. All of it. Finding Derek and the woman tangled in sheets she'd picked out, the things he'd said, the way he'd made her feel like she was the problem for being upset. She told Kara about running, about the coffee shop, about the message she'd meant to send to her best friend, but had instead sent to a stranger named Evan Brooks, who'd shown up anyway. Kara listened without interrupting, her expression cycling through anger and sympathy and something that looked like vindication. When Lila finally finished, Kara set down her coffee mug with deliberate care. I'm going to say something, and I need you to really hear me. Her voice was gentle but firm. I've been waiting for this moment for 2 years. Not the cheating, I would never wish that on you. But the moment you finally saw Derek for who he actually is. Lila blinked. What do you mean? Lila, he's been terrible to you since about month 9 of your relationship. I've watched him chip away at your confidence piece by piece. The comments about your weight when you gained 5 pounds over the holidays. The way he'd joke about your job not being as important as his. How he'd make plans without telling you, then act like you were being controlling when you got upset. The way he'd flirt with other women right in front of you and tell you that you were being insecure when you called him on it. He said I was being dramatic, Lila said quietly. He gaslit you constantly, and I watched you shrink. You used to be so sure of yourself, so vibrant. You had opinions and boundaries, and you didn't apologize for taking up space. Then you got serious with Derek, and suddenly you were second-guessing everything, apologizing for existing, trying so hard to be whatever he needed you to be that you forgot who you actually were. The words hit like physical blows. Lila wanted to argue, to defend the relationship she'd invested 3 years of her life in, but she couldn't find the ammunition, because Kara was right. She knew it in her bones. "Why didn't you say something?" Lila asked, and hated how her voice wavered. "I did. Multiple times. Do you remember?" Kara's expression was pained. "After that fight you had at my birthday dinner when he embarrassed you in front of everyone, I told you he was being cruel. You defended him. When he forgot your anniversary and blamed you for not reminding him, I said that was bullshit. You made excuses. Every time I tried to point out how he was treating you, you'd explain it away or tell me I didn't understand your relationship. So I stopped pushing. I figured you'd either see it eventually or you wouldn't, and all I could do was be here when you needed me." Lila felt tears burning again. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I didn't listen." "Don't apologize to me. Just promise me you won't go back to him." "I don't know if I can make that promise." The admission hurt to say out loud. "My whole life is tangled up with his. Our apartment, our friends, our routines. I don't know how to untangle 3 years in a day." "You don't have to do it in a day. You just have to take the first step." Kara leaned forward, intense. "And the first step is acknowledging that what he did, the cheating, yes, but also everything else, is not something you have to forgive or fix or work through. You get to be done. You get to walk away." Lila's phone buzzed on the table. Both women looked at it. Derek's name flashed on the screen. Lila's hand moved toward it automatically, that old reflex to answer, to smooth things over, to manage his emotions before her own. Kara's hand shot out, covering the phone. "Don't. Not yet. Not until you've had time to think clearly without him in your ear telling you what to think." "He's probably worried," Lila said, even as she hated herself for making excuses. "Good. Let him worry. Let him sit with the consequences of his choices instead of immediately getting to control the narrative." Kara pulled the phone toward herself, declining the call. "You need space, real space. Not just a few hours. What if he shows up here?" "Then I'll tell him you don't want to see him and to leave. And if he doesn't leave, I'll call the police. But Lila, you need to decide what you actually want. Not what's easiest, not what makes other people comfortable, but what you genuinely want for your life." Lila wrapped both hands around her coffee mug, feeling the warmth seep into her palms. What did she want? The question felt enormous, impossible. For 3 years, she'd wanted Derek to be the person she'd fallen for. She'd wanted the relationship to work. She'd wanted to be enough. But what did she want for herself? "I want to not feel anxious all the time," she said slowly. "I want to not be constantly worried I'm going to say the wrong thing or upset him over something small. I want to not feel like I have to perform in my own relationship." "Those are all things you want to not feel," Kara pointed out gently. "What do you want to feel?" Lila thought about Evan sitting across from her in that coffee shop, asking if she was safe. The way he'd listened without judgment, without trying to fix her or minimize her pain. The way he'd said her hurt mattered. "I want to feel like I matter," she whispered. "Like my feelings are valid. Like I don't have to earn basic respect and kindness." "You do matter. You always have. Derek just convinced you otherwise." They sat in silence for a while, drinking coffee as morning light filled the apartment. Lila's phone continued buzzing periodically. Texts, calls, voicemails piling up. She didn't look at them, didn't reach for the phone. Just let them accumulate like evidence of something she was only beginning to understand. Around 10, Kara made eggs and toast. Lila ate mechanically, not tasting anything, her mind cycling through logistics. Her clothes were at the apartment. Her books, her laptop, her grandmother's necklace that lived in the jewelry box on the dresser. Her whole life was in that space she'd shared with Derek, and the thought of going back to collect it made her stomach turn. "I need to get my things," she said, "but I can't face him. Not yet." "Is he at work today?" Lila checked his schedule on her phone, one of those shared calendars couples kept that now felt invasive rather than intimate. "He should be. He has meetings all afternoon. Then we go now. We get your essentials and we get out. You don't owe him a conversation. You don't owe him closure. You take what's yours and you leave." The plan was solid, logical, but Lila's hands shook as they drove to the apartment she'd lived in for 2.5 years, the place she'd thought of as home. Kara parked on the street and squeezed Lila's hand. "I'm coming up with you. You don't have to do this alone." The apartment was exactly as she'd left it. Bed unmade, sheets tangled, the physical evidence of betrayal still there like an open wound. Lila stood in the doorway of the bedroom and felt bile rise in her throat. "I can't sleep in that bed ever again," she said. "Then don't. We'll get you a new one. But right now, let's just grab what you need and go." They worked quickly, Kara pulling clothes from the closet while Lila gathered toiletries, her laptop, important documents. The grandmother's necklace went into her purse. Family photos came off the walls. She moved through the space like a ghost, taking what was hers and leaving everything that belonged to them. The kitchen gadgets they'd bought together, the artwork they'd picked out, the throw blankets and decorative bowls, and all the accumulated debris of a shared life. She was pulling books off the shelf when she found it, a lingerie receipt from 3 weeks ago, tucked between 2 novels. The date, the items, the price. She stared at it, something cold settling in her chest. Derek had bought lingerie 3 weeks ago. She'd never received it, which meant it had been for someone else. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This wasn't a moment of weakness. This was premeditated, ongoing. "Lila?" Kara appeared in the doorway. "You okay?" Lila held up the receipt. Kara took it, read it, and her expression darkened. "That son of a bitch. How long do you think it's been going on?" Lila heard her own voice like it was coming from very far away. "How long has he been doing this while I was at work, while I was traveling, while I was sleeping next to him every night? It doesn't matter how long. What matters is you know now." But it did matter. It mattered because every moment Lila had spent blaming herself for the relationship deteriorating, Derek had been actively betraying her. Every fight where he'd made her feel unreasonable, he'd been the one in the wrong. Every time she'd tried harder to be better, he'd been investing that effort somewhere else. The front door opened. Both women froze. Footsteps in the hallway, then Derek appeared, tall, handsome in that clean-cut corporate way, wearing the suit she'd helped him pick out for his promotion last year. His expression cycled through surprise, then relief, then something that might have been calculation. "Lila, thank God. I've been trying to reach you all night. We need to talk about this." "No," Lila said. Her voice came out stronger than she expected. "We don't. Baby, please, just let me explain. It was a mistake, a terrible mistake, but we can work through this. 3 years is worth fighting for." "Were you fighting for it when you bought lingerie for another woman?" Lila held up the receipt. 3 weeks ago, Derek. This has been going on for at least 3 weeks, probably longer." Something flickered across his face. Guilt, maybe, or just annoyance at being caught. "It's not what you think. She doesn't mean anything. You're the one I love. You're the one I want to build a life with." "Then why did you bring her to our bed?" "Because you're never here." The words exploded out of him, and Lila recognized the pattern. Deflect, blame, make it her fault. "You work 60-hour weeks. You're always stressed, always tired. When's the last time you actually wanted to have sex? When's the last time you initiated anything?" Kara stepped forward, voice sharp. "Don't you dare turn this around on her. You cheated. You lied. You bought another woman lingerie with money from your shared account. None of that is Lila's fault." "Stay out of this, Kara. This is between me and my girlfriend." "Ex-girlfriend," Lila said quietly, and watched Derek's face change. "You don't mean that. You're upset. You're emotional. I found the receipt, Derek. I know this wasn't one mistake. And honestly, even if it was, even if last night was the very first time, I still wouldn't stay. Because the way you spoke to me when I caught you, the way you made me feel crazy for being hurt, told me everything I need to know about how you really see me. Derek's expression hardened. So you're just going to throw away 3 years? Walk away without even trying to fix this? You threw it away when you cheated. I'm just acknowledging what you already did. Fine. His voice went cold. Take your stuff and go. But this apartment is in my name, so you better clear out everything today. And don't come crying back when you realize how hard it is out there. You're not exactly a catch anymore, Lila. You think someone better is going to want you? The words were designed to hurt, to make her doubt, to pull her back into the familiar pattern of believing she wasn't enough. And they did hurt. They cut deep. But they also crystallized something for Lila. This was who Derek actually was. Not the charming man she'd fallen for, but this cruel stranger who weaponized her insecurities to maintain control. Get out, Kara said, stepping between them. Lila is taking her things and leaving, and you're going to let her do it without any more of your bullshit, or I swear to God I will make sure everyone in your professional network knows exactly what kind of man you are. Derek looked at Kara, then at Lila, then seemed to calculate that he'd already lost this battle. Whatever, I'll be in the bedroom. Be gone when I come out. He disappeared down the hall, and Lila heard the bedroom door slam. She stood there shaking, adrenaline flooding her system, tears threatening but not quite falling. Keep packing, Kara said quietly. We're almost done. They finished in 20 minutes, loading boxes and bags into Kara's car. Lila took one last look at the apartment, at the life she'd built and believed in, and felt nothing but relief that she was leaving. She pulled out her keys, removed the apartment key from the ring, and left it on the kitchen counter. Then she walked out and didn't look back. They drove to a storage facility where Lila rented a small unit for her boxes. Most of it would stay there until she figured out her next move, found a new place, rebuilt her life from pieces. For now, she'd stay with Kara, sleep on the couch, and figure out one day at a time how to be alone. Back at Kara's apartment, Lila finally let herself look at her phone. The messages from Derek had evolved over the course of the day, starting with apologies, moving to blame, ending with anger. She read them dispassionately, seeing the manipulation in every word. I'm sorry, baby. Please come home. We can work through this if you just give me a chance. You're being unreasonable, you know that, right? I guess 3 years meant nothing to you. Fine, leave. See if I care. You'll regret this. She blocked his number, blocked him on social media, removed him from every shared account and app. It felt surgical, methodical, necessary. Then she pulled out Evan's business card, still in her purse from last night. She stared at it for a long time, debating whether to text him. He'd said to reach out if she needed a calm voice, but what would she even say? That she'd taken his advice? That she'd walked away? That she was terrified and relieved and didn't know how to feel about any of it? Her fingers moved before she'd fully decided, typing out a message. This is Lila from last night. I just wanted you to know I left him, got my stuff and blocked his number. I don't know if you actually meant it when you said I could text you, but I guess I needed to tell someone who'd understand. Thank you again for showing up. It mattered more than you know. She hit send before she could overthink it, then set the phone down and waited for the regret to hit. It didn't. Instead, she felt lighter somehow, like she'd taken a step towards something instead of just away from something. Her phone buzzed 3 minutes later. I meant it. And I'm proud of you. Walking away takes real courage. How are you holding up? Lila smiled despite everything, despite the ache in her chest and the uncertainty looming ahead. Someone was asking how she was. Actually asking, not performing concern while waiting for their turn to talk. Honestly, I'm terrified, but also relieved. Does that make sense? Perfect sense. The right decision can still be scary. Do you have a safe place to stay? Yeah, I'm with my friend Kara. She's letting me crash here while I figure things out. Good. That's good. Listen, I know this is overwhelming right now, but you did the hard part. You chose yourself. Everything else is just logistics. Lila read that message 3 times. You chose yourself. When was the last time she'd done that? When was the last time her own needs had come first? She didn't know, couldn't remember, but she was choosing herself now. Over the next few days, Lila moved through a strange haze of grief and liberation. She cried at unexpected moments, in the shower, folding laundry, passing a restaurant where she and Derek used to eat. But she also slept better than she had in months, waking without the familiar knot of anxiety in her stomach. She didn't have to perform. Didn't have to manage someone else's mood. Didn't have to walk on eggshells. She texted with Evan sporadically. Nothing heavy, just check-ins that felt genuine. He'd send her messages at odd hours. Mason asked me why the moon changes shape, and I gave him a 15-minute explanation about lunar phases. His eyes glazed over at minute 3, but he was too polite to tell me to stop, and she'd respond with her own small moments, the mundane details of rebuilding. A week after leaving Derek, Lila went apartment hunting. The places in her budget were small, sometimes depressing, nothing like the spacious 2-bedroom she'd shared. But they were hers. Spaces where she could start over, where no one had betrayed her, where she could learn to be alone without being lonely. She found a studio in an older building with good light and hardwood floors that creaked when you walked. It was available immediately. She signed the lease that afternoon, hands shaking with something that felt like hope. Got a new place, she texted Evan. It's tiny, but it's mine. Move in next weekend. His response came quickly. That's huge. Congratulations. You need help moving? She stared at the message. They texted for a week, but that was different from actually seeing each other again. Part of her wanted to say yes, wanted the steady presence he'd offered that night in the coffee shop. But another part worried she was leaning on a stranger too much, taking advantage of kindness. You don't have to do that, she typed. You've already done so much. I know I don't have to. I'm offering because I want to. Plus, I have a truck and nothing planned Saturday except Mason's soccer game in the morning. What time do you need help? Lila felt something warm unfurl in her chest. When was the last time someone had offered help without strings attached, without keeping score? Noon? If you're sure. I'm sure. Send me the address Friday. Saturday morning arrived with clear skies and the kind of crisp fall weather that made everything feel possible. Lila had spent the previous day packing the essentials she'd kept at Kara's, organizing boxes, preparing for the next chapter. Kara had helped, making jokes and blasting music and turning the whole thing into something that felt less like loss and more like transformation. When Evan's truck pulled up at noon, Lila felt unexpectedly nervous. She watched from Kara's window as he got out. Same work boots, same easy movements, a boy about 8 years old climbing out of the passenger seat. Mason, dark hair like his father's, wearing a soccer jersey and shoes that lit up when he walked. Is that him? Kara peered over Lila's shoulder. The wrong number guy? Yeah. He's cute. And a regular guy actually has his life together way. Kara? What? I'm just observing facts. She grinned. Also, he brought his kid to help you move. That's either really sweet or really weird. It's Saturday. He probably has custody. Still sweet. They went downstairs to meet them. Evan's face lit up when he saw Lila, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. Hey, you made it through the week. Barely, Lila admitted. But yeah, I did. Lila, this is Mason. Mason, this is my friend Lila. She's moving into a new apartment today and we're going to help. Mason stuck out his hand with endearing formality. Nice to meet you, Miss Lila. Just Lila is fine. She shook his hand, charmed despite herself. And this is my friend Kara. They loaded the truck efficiently, everyone working together. Mason carried lighter boxes with fierce determination, wanting to help like the adults. Kara chatted easily with Evan about soccer and HVAC work and the best pizza places in the city. Lila found herself watching Evan interact with his son, patient when Mason dropped a box, encouraging when he struggled with something heavy, present in a way that felt effortless. This was what good parenting looked like, what healthy relationships looked like, people showing up for each other without keeping score. At the new apartment, they hauled everything upstairs to the 3rd floor. No elevator, just narrow stairs that made maneuvering furniture an adventure. Evan took charge without being controlling, suggesting strategies and letting everyone contribute. When they finally got the last box inside, they stood in Lila's empty studio, just 4 people in a pile of boxes and the beginning of something new. Well, Evan said, looking around, it's got good bones. Light's nice. You'll make it home. I hope so. Lila felt suddenly emotional, overwhelmed by the generosity of strangers turned friends. Thank you, both of you. I couldn't have done this without help. That's what people do. Evan said simply. They help. Mason tugged on his father's sleeve. Dad, can we get pizza now? You said we could get pizza after. I did say that. Evan looked at Lila and Kara. You two want to join us? My treat, as a housewarming thing. Lila started to decline. They'd already done so much. But Kara jumped in. We'd love to. I'm starving. They went to a place nearby, nothing fancy, just good pizza and cold drinks and easy conversation. Mason told elaborate stories about a soccer game that morning, complete with dramatic reenactments of goals and saves. Kara shared embarrassing stories about Lila from college. Evan talked about the weird things he'd found in people's air ducts over the years. And Lila just sat there, taking it all in, feeling something she hadn't felt in years. Like she was exactly where she was supposed to be, with exactly the people she was supposed to be with. No performance, no anxiety, no walking on eggshells, just presence, just connection. When they finally parted ways, Kara heading home, Evan and Mason climbing back in the truck, Evan pulled Lila aside for a moment. You doing okay? Really? Yeah, Lila said, and meant it. I mean, it's hard. Some days are really hard, but I'm doing it. I'm choosing myself, like you said. Good. Keep doing that. He hesitated, then added, Mason's birthday is next week. Just a small thing at the park. Cake, some games, nothing fancy. If you want to come, you're welcome. No pressure. Lila looked at this man who'd shown up for her twice now, who'd helped her move and bought her pizza and offered friendship with no agenda. I'd like that, if you're sure. I'm sure. Mason already asked if the nice lady from today was coming to his party. I think you made an impression. He's a sweet kid. He is. Gets it from his mother. Evan said it without bitterness, just fact. Anyway, I'll text you the details. And Lila, you're going to be okay. I know it doesn't feel like it yet, but you are. How do you know? Because you're already okay. You just haven't realized it yet. He left her with that, and Lila stood on the sidewalk watching his truck disappear, feeling the weight and possibility of her new life settling around her shoulders. Her phone buzzed. Derek's number, somehow unblocked, one final message. You'll regret this. You'll come crawling back. She read it once, felt nothing but pity for someone so threatened by her independence, and blocked him again. Then she deleted the message, deleted the thread, erased that entire chapter from her phone's memory. She climbed the 3 flights to her empty studio, stood in the middle of all her boxes, and felt something close to peace. The apartment was quiet. The future was uncertain. But for the first time in 3 years, Lila belonged entirely to herself. And that was enough. The week between moving in and Mason's birthday party passed in a blur of unpacking and rediscovery. Lila would wake up in her studio apartment, sunlight streaming through windows she'd chosen, silence she controlled, and have to remind herself this wasn't temporary. This was her life now. No Derek in the bathroom monopolizing the mirror, no passive-aggressive notes about dishes left in the sink, no carefully modulated tone required to avoid setting off an argument. Just her, a coffee maker that worked half the time, and the creaking floorboards that had become oddly comforting. She'd gone back to work that Monday, enduring the inevitable questions from colleagues who'd noticed her distraction, her red eyes, the absence of her engagement ring that technically had never existed because Derek had always said they'd pick one out together when the time was right. The time, apparently, was never going to be right. Her boss had pulled her aside, asked if everything was okay, and when Lila said she'd ended a long relationship, the woman had simply nodded and told her to take whatever time she needed. Lila had cried in the bathroom after that, overwhelmed by the simple kindness of being seen. Work became an anchor. The familiar rhythms of campaigns and client meetings and strategic planning gave her somewhere to direct her energy that wasn't the gaping hole Derek had left. Except it wasn't really a hole she was realizing. It was more like space, room to breathe, room to remember who she'd been before she'd spent 3 years contorting herself into someone Derek might love properly. Her team noticed the difference. Sarah from design said Lila seemed lighter somehow, more present in meetings. Marcus from accounts joked that she'd gotten her spark back. Lila didn't tell them that the spark had never left. It had just been systematically dimmed until she'd forgotten it existed. The apartment slowly became home. She'd hung curtains, arranged furniture, put up the photographs that Derek had always said cluttered the space. Pictures of her parents who died when she was 23, a car accident on a rainy Tuesday that had rewritten her understanding of permanence, photos of college friends, of Kara at graduation, of Lila herself at 22 with eyes that still believed the world was fundamentally safe. She looked at that younger version of herself and felt protective. Wished she could tell her what was coming, warn her about men who made you feel special by making you feel small. Evan had texted her twice during the week, once to check in, once to confirm she was still coming to the party. His messages were brief but warm, no pressure, no expectation. Lila found herself looking forward to them, to the proof that someone cared how she was doing without needing anything from her in return. Saturday arrived with unseasonable warmth, the kind of October day that felt stolen from summer. Lila stood in front of her closet, smaller now, just her clothes, nothing of Derek's taking up space, and debated what to wear to a child's birthday party. She settled on jeans and a soft blue sweater, comfortable and casual, nothing that screamed trying too hard. She'd bought Mason a card and a book about planets because Evan had mentioned his son's obsession with space, and now she worried it was too much, not enough, somehow wrong. The park was 20 minutes away, tucked into a neighborhood that felt lived in and real. Families occupied the playground. Dogs chased tennis balls in the open field. Teenagers claimed the basketball courts with the territorial certainty of youth. Lila spotted Evan near the picnic tables, setting up decorations with the focused determination of a single parent trying to make magic happen on a budget. Mason was already playing with a group of kids, his light-up shoes flashing as he ran. "You came," Evan said when he saw her, and his smile was so genuinely pleased that Lila felt something warm settle in her chest. "I said I would." "I know, but I also know how hard it is to show up to things when you're going through hell, so thank you for coming anyway." Lila held out the wrapped book. "For Mason. I hope it's okay. You mentioned he liked space." Evan took it, turning it over in his hands. "You didn't have to get him anything." "I wanted to." "He's going to love it. Fair warning, though, he's going to want you to read it with him approximately 47 times, and he'll quiz you on planetary facts you definitely won't remember." "I'll take my chances." The party was small, maybe 10 kids total. A few other parents Evan knew from school or soccer, Mrs. Chen, who'd brought homemade dumplings because she'd decided store-bought cake wasn't enough. It was chaotic and loud, and nothing like the carefully curated gatherings Lila had attended with Derek, where every detail was Instagram perfect and completely devoid of actual joy. This was messy and real, kids with grass-stained knees and parents who looked tired but happy. The kind of scene that reminded you what mattered. Mason spotted her and ran over, breathless and grinning. "You came. Dad said you might not, but I told him you would because you seem like someone who keeps promises." "Your dad was testing my reliability," Lila said, shooting Evan a look. "Good to know." "I was not," Evan protested. "I was managing expectations." "Dad's bad at managing expectations," Mason confided. "Last week he said we'd have tacos for dinner and we had spaghetti because he forgot to buy tortillas." "Traitor," Evan said, ruffling his son's hair. "Go play. We'll do cake in 30 minutes." Mason darted off, already absorbed back into the game of tag happening near the swings. Lila watched him go, struck by his easy joy, the uncomplicated way he moved through the world. "He's great," she said. "You're doing a really good job with him." Evan looked at his son with an expression that was pure parental love mixed with bone-deep exhaustion. "Some days I'm sure I'm screwing him up permanently. Other days I think maybe we're doing okay. Today's an okay day." "Does his mom see him much?" The question came out before Lila could stop it. Too personal, too intrusive. But Evan didn't seem bothered. "She calls every few months, sends birthday cards sometimes, sees him maybe twice a year when she's in town. She lives in Portland now, got remarried to someone who doesn't want kids. Mason used to ask about her more, but he's kind of accepted this is how it is. He's got me, got Mrs. Chen, got his routines. Kids are resilient. That doesn't make it fair." "No," Evan agreed quietly. "It doesn't. But fair stopped mattering the day she left. All that matters now is making sure he knows he's loved and wanted, even if one of the people who should have loved him chose not to." Lila thought about Derek, about the messages he'd sent trying to convince her she was making a mistake, that she'd never find anyone better. She thought about how he'd made her feel like she was always the problem, never quite enough. And she looked at Evan, at this man who'd been abandoned by someone who should have cherished what they had, and who'd simply rolled up his sleeves and done the work anyway. "How do you not be bitter?" she asked. "About her leaving, about doing it alone. How do you just keep going?" Evan was quiet for a moment, watching Mason climb the jungle gym with reckless confidence. "I was bitter. For a long time. Angry at her for leaving, angry at myself for not seeing it coming, angry at the world for being unfair. But staying angry was like drinking poison and expecting her to die. It was only hurting me and Mason, so I made a choice. I could spend my energy being pissed about what I didn't have, or I could invest it in what I did have. Mason needed a parent who was present, not one who was drowning in resentment. So I let it go. Not all at once, not easily, but piece by piece until it stopped defining me." "I don't know if I can do that," Lila admitted. "With Derek, every time I think I'm past it, I'll see something that reminds me of him and I'm just angry all over again." "That's normal. You're what, 2 weeks out? Give yourself permission to feel it. The anger, the grief, all of it. You don't have to be noble about it. You just have to not let it become who you are." A kid ran up then, crying about a scraped knee, and Evan shifted seamlessly into dad mode, producing a Band-Aid from his pocket like a magician, murmuring reassurances, sending the child back to play with renewed confidence. Lila watched the easy competence of it, the way he knew exactly how much sympathy to give before encouraging resilience. "You carry Band-Aids to birthday parties," she observed. "I carry Band-Aids everywhere. You have a kid, you learn that disaster is always one game of tag away. I've also got wet wipes, hand sanitizer, an extra inhaler even though Mason doesn't have asthma, and approximately 6 snacks of varying nutritional value." "That's very prepared." "That's very neurotic," Evan corrected, "but it's saved my ass more times than I can count." They did cake after that, Mason blowing out candles with 8-year-old enthusiasm while everyone sang off-key. He opened presents with genuine delight, a soccer ball, some Legos, a handheld video game that made Evan wince at the price tag some parent had clearly dropped. When he got to Lila's book, his eyes went wide. "This is the one with all the real photos from the Hubble telescope. I wanted this so bad." He looked at her with something approaching awe. "How did you know?" "Your dad mentioned you liked space," Lila said, feeling absurdly pleased by his reaction. "I took a guess." "Can you read it with me later, please? Dad's not good at the science words." "I am perfectly adequate at science words," Evan protested. "You pronounced uranium like it was a place in Russia," Mason said solemnly. "That was one time." Lila laughed, the sound surprising her with its genuineness. "I'll read it with you, but only if you promise not to quiz me later." "I promise to only quiz you a little bit." "Deal." The party wound down as afternoon stretched toward evening. Parents collected tired children, trash bags filled with paper plates and napkins. Leftover cake got divided into containers for people to take home. Lila helped clean up without being asked, stacking chairs and wiping tables alongside Mrs. Chenu told her stories about Evan as a teenager with the kind of affection usually reserved for family. "He was always like this," the old woman said, gesturing at Evan, who was trying to get grass stains out of Mason's shirt with questionable success. "Always the first one to help, to show up when someone needed him. His parents, they were good people, but busy, always working. Evan learned young that if you wanted something done, you did it yourself. But he also learned you don't leave people behind. When his brother died, I thought he would break. Instead, he just got quieter, more determined. Like he decided the best way to honor his brother was to be the kind of person who showed up." Lila absorbed this, understanding Evan a little better. That night in the coffee shop hadn't been an anomaly. It was who he was. When the park was finally clean and Mason was begging to go home to read his new book, Evan walked Lila to her car. The evening had cooled, that perfect temperature where you didn't need a jacket but could feel autumn in the air. "Thanks for coming," Evan said. "And for the book. You made his day." "He made mine," Lila said honestly. "This was good. Normal. I needed normal." "How are you doing? Really doing, not the polite answer you give people at work." Lila leaned against her car, considering the question. "I'm doing okay, better than I expected. The apartment helps, having a space that's just mine. Work helps. But it's weird, you know? I spent 3 years with someone and now I just don't. I keep having these moments where I want to tell him something, or I'll cook dinner and automatically make too much, or I'll reach for my phone to text him and remember I can't. And I'm not even sure I want to. It's just habit, muscle memory from a life I don't have anymore. That'll fade, Evan said gently. The phantom limb sensation of a relationship. Takes time, but eventually you stop reaching for something that isn't there. Did it fade for you with your ex? Yeah. Took about a year before I stopped automatically buying 2 of everything at the grocery store, stopped setting the table for 3. Now I barely remember what it felt like to have her around. That probably sounds harsh, but it's true. She's just this person I used to know, who gave me the best thing in my life and then left. I'm grateful for Mason and indifferent to her. That's the best kind of moving on. A soccer ball rolled toward them from the field, and Mason came running after it, face flushed with exertion. Dad, can Lila come over tomorrow? I want to show her my telescope, and you said we could look at the moon if it's clear. Evan glanced at Lila, eyebrows raised in question. You're welcome to. No pressure, though. I know you probably have things to do. Lila thought about her empty Sunday, about unpacking boxes and arranging furniture, and sitting alone in her studio trying to figure out who she was now. Then she thought about Mason's enthusiasm, Evan's steady presence, the possibility of connection that didn't feel complicated or fraught. What time? She asked. Mason's face lit up. 6 o'clock. That's when it gets dark enough to see good. We can have dinner first. Dad makes really good spaghetti when he remembers to actually make spaghetti. One time, Evan muttered. I forgot tortillas one time. I'd love to come, Lila said, and meant it. She drove home with the windows down, letting the cool air wash over her, feeling something that resembled happiness fluttering in her chest. It was small, tentative, but it was there. She was making friends, building a life, choosing experiences that felt good instead of obligatory. Her phone buzzed at a red light, Derek's number. He'd somehow gotten around the block again, or maybe he'd gotten a new number. The message preview showed on her screen. I saw you today. At the park. Playing happy family with some guy and his kid. You move on fast. Guess I never really knew you. Lila's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He'd been watching her, following her. The thought made her skin crawl, made the happiness from moments ago curdle into something closer to fear. But underneath the fear was anger, bright and clarifying. How dare he? How dare he invade this space, taint this good day with his presence? She pulled over, hands shaking, and called Kara. He's following me, she said when Kara answered. Derek, he was at the park today watching me. He just texted me about it. That's stalking, Lila. That's illegal. You need to go to the police. And tell them what? That my ex texted me about seeing me in a public park? They won't do anything. Save the message. Screenshot it. If he does it again, you'll have a pattern, and block this number too. I keep blocking him and he keeps finding ways around it. Kara was quiet for a moment. Do you want me to come over? Or you could come here. You shouldn't be alone if you're scared. I'm not scared, Lila said, and realized it was true. She was angry. Angry that Derek couldn't just let her go, that he needed to control the narrative even after she'd left, that he was trying to make her feel unsafe in her own city. I'm pissed. I'm so tired of him having power over my emotions. I just want him to disappear and let me move on. He will eventually. Men like Derek can't stand being ignored. Once he realizes you're really not coming back, that his messages aren't getting the response he wants, he'll move on to someone else he can control. That's a depressing thought, but it's true. And in the meantime, you document everything. Every call, every text, every time you see him somewhere you didn't expect him to be. Because if it escalates, you'll need evidence. Lila took a screenshot of Derek's message, added it to a folder she'd created called Evidence, and blocked the number. Then she texted Evan. Something came up. Still okay for tomorrow, but wanted to give you a heads up that my ex might be causing problems. If that's too much drama for you, I completely understand. His response came quickly. What kind of problems? Following me, apparently? He texted me about seeing me at the park today. I don't think he's dangerous, but he's definitely not handling the breakup well. Do you feel safe? There it was again. That question. The one that cut through everything else and got to the heart of what mattered. Mostly. Just shaken up. Offer stands for tomorrow. And if you need anything before then, call me. I'm serious. Day or night. Lila read that message 3 times. Let the steadiness of it settle her nerves. Someone was in her corner. Someone who didn't need her to be anything other than honest. Thank you. I'll see you tomorrow. She drove the rest of the way home, checked her apartment twice to make sure all the locks worked, and then did something she hadn't done in years. She called her older brother James in Seattle. They talked maybe 4 times a year, brief conversations that never went deeper than weather and work. But tonight she needed family, needed someone who'd known her before Derek, before she'd learned to make herself small. Lila? Everything okay? James sounded concerned. She never called this late. I left Derek, caught him cheating, moved out 2 weeks ago. Silence. Then, about damn time. You didn't like him. I thought he was an asshole who made you nervous in your own relationship. But you seemed happy, so I kept my mouth shut. Clearly, I should have said something. I wouldn't have listened. I had to figure it out myself. They talked for an hour, James telling her about his own divorce 3 years prior, the ways it had broken him and rebuilt him into something stronger. He told her she could come to Seattle anytime, that his guest room was always available, that blood mattered more than geography. Lila cried and laughed and felt less alone than she had in months. When she finally hung up, her apartment felt less empty. She unpacked another box, hung more pictures, turned on music and sang off-key while she worked. Derek didn't get to ruin this. He didn't get to make her afraid of living her life. Sunday evening, she drove to Evan's house, a small ranch-style home in a neighborhood where kids' bikes littered front yards, and people actually talked to their neighbors. Mason met her at the door, practically vibrating with excitement about the moon viewing, already wearing pajamas printed with constellations. We have to wait until it's really dark, he explained, ushering her inside. But Dad made spaghetti, the right kind this time, and we can eat while we wait. The house was lived in and comfortable. Toys in the corner, homework on the kitchen table, pictures of Mason at various ages covering the refrigerator. It felt like a home, not just a place to sleep. Evan was at the stove, stirring sauce that smelled like garlic and herbs and care. Hope you like spaghetti, he said. Mason has decided it's my signature dish, which is unfortunate because it's one of maybe 3 things I can cook without consulting the internet. What are the other 2? Eggs and grilled cheese. I'm very culinarily limited. They ate at the kitchen table, Mason dominating the conversation with facts about lunar phases and tidal forces and whether people would ever live on the moon. Evan listened with the patience of someone who'd heard these theories many times before but found them charming anyway. Lila contributed where she could, asked questions that made Mason light up, felt herself relaxing into the rhythm of their household. After dinner, Mason declared it dark enough and dragged his telescope into the backyard. It was a modest setup, nothing professional, but clearly well-loved and frequently used. He positioned it carefully, made minute adjustments, then peered through the eyepiece with scientific intensity. Got it! Lila, look! She bent to the telescope and saw the moon, cratered and bright and impossibly close. Mason pointed out features with the confidence of an expert, naming craters and seas with casual precision. Evan stood slightly apart, letting his sun shine, pride evident in every line of his face. Your turn, Dad, Mason finally said, relinquishing the telescope. Evan looked, made appropriate appreciative noises, then stepped back. Why don't you see if you can find Mars? I told Lila it's visible this month. Mason dove back into his observations, leaving the adult standing in the cool darkness. Above them, stars scattered across the sky in patterns Lila had forgotten to notice. The city lights dimmed them, but not enough to erase their presence. He's really smart, Lila said quietly. You're raising a remarkable kid. He is pretty great, Evan agreed. Even when he's correcting my pronunciation of uranium. Especially then. They stood in comfortable silence, watching Mason work. Lila thought about Derek, about whether he was watching her now from somewhere in the darkness, and found she didn't care. She was here, in this moment, with people who made her feel valued. Whatever Derek did with his bitterness was his problem, not hers. I got another message from him yesterday, she said. Derek, he was at the park yesterday watching me, texted me about it. Evan's posture changed, subtle but noticeable. He's following you. Seems like it. My friend told me to document everything in case it escalates. Your friend's right. But also, and I'm not trying to scare you, you need to trust your instincts. If something feels off, if you see him places he shouldn't be, you don't second guess yourself. You get somewhere safe and you call for help. I don't think he'd hurt me. Physically, I mean. Probably not. But guys who lose control of their partners sometimes do unpredictable things. I'm not saying live in fear, I'm just saying be aware. And don't let him isolate you. Keep seeing friends, doing normal things, living your life. Guys like that want you scared and alone. Don't give him that. Mason called out then, excited about finding Mars, and the moment passed. But Lila tucked Evan's words away, the warning and the care behind it. Someone was watching out for her. Someone wanted her safe, not because they owned her, but because her well-being mattered. They stayed in the backyard until Mason started yawning, then moved inside for hot chocolate and the reading of the planet book. Mason curled up between them on the couch, listening as Lila read about Jupiter's storms and Saturn's rings, asking questions that required looking up answers on Evan's phone. By the time they reached Pluto, still a planet in Mason's heart, controversies be damned. The boy was struggling to keep his eyes open. Bedtime, Evan announced, and Mason only protested a little before dragging himself toward his bedroom. Will you come back? He asked Lila at the doorway. This was really fun. I'd like that, Lila said. Good. Next time you can meet my friend Tyler. He's really into dinosaurs, so you'd probably like him because smart people like different kinds of facts. That's very logical. I'm a logical person, Mason said seriously, then disappeared down the hall. Evan walked Lila to the door, stopping on the porch where moths fluttered around the light. The neighborhood was quiet, Sunday evening settling into that particular stillness before the week began again. Thank you for tonight, Lila said, for including me. It helped more than you know. You're easy to include. Mason already likes you better than he likes me. That's not true. It's a little true. You're better at the science words. Lila smiled, felt it reach her eyes, felt like maybe she was starting to remember how to be happy. I should go. Work tomorrow. Yeah, me too. Exciting Monday morning in someone's attic checking ductwork. She started down the steps, then turned back. Evan, can I ask you something? Why did you help me? That first night, and all the nights after. You didn't know me. You didn't owe me anything. Why keep showing up? Evan thought about it, leaning against the porch railing. Because I know what it's like to need help and not know how to ask for it. And because you reminded me that sometimes the smallest decision, answering a wrong number, driving across town, just showing up, can change everything. You gave me a chance to be the person I needed when I was at my lowest. That's not nothing. It's everything, Lila said softly. Yeah, Evan agreed. It kind of is. She drove home through empty streets, past houses where families were settling in for the night, past the park where Derek had watched her, past all the places that made up her city and her life. And she felt, for the first time since finding Derek in their bed, like maybe she was going to be okay. More than okay. Like maybe this ending was actually a beginning, and she was finally strong enough to see it through. The weeks that followed settled into a rhythm Lila hadn't expected, one built on small moments rather than grand gestures, on showing up rather than performing, on being present instead of perfect. Work consumed her days in the best possible way, campaigns launching with her fingerprints all over them, clients praising the creative energy she brought to pitches. Her boss mentioned a promotion casually over coffee, said the leadership team had noticed her renewed focus, her confidence. Lila had smiled and thanked her, not mentioning that the confidence came from finally choosing herself, from learning that being alone was different from being lonely. She saw Evan and Mason regularly now, their lives intersecting in ways that felt natural rather than forced. Tuesday night dinners became a standing thing after Mason asked if Lila could help him with a school project about the solar system, and she'd ended up staying for pizza. Saturday morning soccer games where she'd sit on the bleachers with the other parents, cheering when Mason scored and commiserating when his team lost. Casual texts throughout the week, Evan sending her pictures of the bizarre things he found in air ducts, Lila responding with stories from particularly absurd client meetings. It was friendship, uncomplicated and genuine. And Lila found herself treasuring it in ways she hadn't treasured anything in years. But Derek wouldn't disappear. He'd call from new numbers she'd have to block, send emails to her work account that she'd delete without reading, show up at places she frequented with a casualness that felt calculated. He never approached her directly, never made overt threats, just made sure she knew he was watching. Kara said it was a control tactic, that he couldn't stand losing his grip on her narrative. Lila's brother James wanted her to file a restraining order. But what would she tell the police? That her ex kept texting her, kept showing up in public places where he had every right to be. She documented everything anyway, screenshots filling a folder that grew heavier with each passing week, and she tried not to let it consume her, tried to keep living her life with the defiance of someone who refused to be controlled. 3 weeks after Mason's birthday party, Lila was leaving work late on a Thursday when she saw Derek leaning against her car in the parking garage. Her stomach dropped, that familiar combination of fear and anger flooding her system. She stopped about 15 feet away, keys gripped tight in her hand. "You need to leave," she said, keeping her voice level despite the way her heart hammered. "I just want to talk." Derek straightened, hands in his pockets, that charming smile she'd once loved now looking like a mask poorly fitted. 5 minutes, that's all I'm asking. I have nothing to say to you. But I have things to say to you. About us, about the mistakes I made and how I want to fix them. There is no us. There hasn't been for almost a month. You need to accept that and move on. Derek's expression shifted, the charm cracking to reveal something harder underneath. Move on to what? To that guy with the kid? The HVAC tech or whatever he is? You're really trading down, Lila, from me to some blue-collar single dad who probably can't even afford to take you to a decent restaurant. The casual cruelty of it hit like a slap. This was who Derek was. Someone who measured worth by job titles and income, who saw people as status symbols rather than human beings. How had she ever loved him? How had she ever thought his judgment mattered? "Evan is a better man than you'll ever be," Lila said quietly. "He shows up for people without keeping score. He doesn't need to tear others down to feel important. And he's my friend, not that it's any of your business who I spend time with." "Friend," Derek laughed, sharp and bitter. "Is that what you're calling it? You think I don't see what's happening? You end our relationship and immediately start playing house with someone else. Did you cheat on me, Lila? Is that why you were so quick to leave?" The accusation was so absurd, so perfectly Derek, taking his own betrayal and somehow making it her fault, her flaw. Lila felt something inside her snap, that final thread of civility she'd been maintaining out of habit rather than necessity. "Get away from my car. Get out of this parking garage. And stop following me. Stop texting me. Stop showing up places hoping to run into me. We're done. We've been done. And nothing you say or do is going to change that. You're making a mistake. You think he's going to want you long term, a woman in her 30s with baggage and a demanding career? He's going to realize you're not worth the effort, just like I did. And when he leaves, don't come crawling back to me." Lila pulled out her phone, opened the camera, and started recording. "I'm asking you one more time to leave. I'm documenting this interaction. If you don't go right now, I'm calling building security and filing a formal complaint for harassment." Derek's face flushed with anger. For a moment, Lila thought he might escalate, might actually do something that would justify her fear. But then he stepped away from her car, hands raised in mock surrender. "Fine, I'm going, but you're going to regret this, Lila. You're going to realize what you gave up, and it's going to destroy you." He walked away, footsteps echoing in the concrete structure. Lila waited until she heard his car start and drive off before she let herself shake, before she let the fear and adrenaline work through her system. She got in her car with hands that trembled, locked the doors, and sat there breathing hard until the panic subsided. Then she called Evan. He answered on the second ring. "Hey, what's up?" "Derek cornered me in my parking garage at work." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "He didn't touch me, didn't threaten me directly, but he was waiting by my car and wouldn't leave until I threatened to call security." "Are you safe right now? Are you still in the garage?" "Yeah, I'm in my car. He left. I recorded part of it on my phone." "Good. That's good. Do you want me to come there, or do you want to come here? You shouldn't be alone right now." Lila checked the time. Almost 7. Mason would be doing homework or getting ready for bed. "I don't want to disrupt your night." "You're not disrupting anything. Mason's at a sleepover. First one he's ever been to. He was so nervous this morning I thought he might throw up. It's just me here. Come over. We'll figure out what to do about Derek. She drove to Evan's house, the familiar route calming her nerves slightly. He was waiting on the porch when she arrived, came down to meet her as soon as she parked. Without saying anything, he pulled her into a hug, solid and warm and exactly what she needed. Lila let herself lean into it, let herself take comfort from someone who didn't expect anything in return. "I'm okay," she said against his shoulder. "I know you are, but you also don't have to be okay all the time." They went inside, Evan making tea while Lila forwarded him the video she'd recorded. He watched it twice, expression darkening. "This is escalating," he said. "The frequency, the locations, the things he's saying, he's not backing off. I don't know what to do. File a restraining order that probably won't get approved because he hasn't actually done anything illegal? Change my whole life to avoid places he might be? I refuse to let him have that much power." Evan set down his phone, thinking. "You're right that a restraining order might not get approved yet, but you can file a police report, get this on record. And you should tell your building security about him. Give them his photo. Ask them to call you if he shows up. Same with your apartment building. Create a paper trail so if this does escalate, there's documentation." "You sound like you know about this stuff." "My ex had a stalker for a while, before we got married. Some guy from her college who couldn't accept that she wasn't interested. It got bad enough that she had to move apartments, change her phone number, the whole thing. Eventually he fixated on someone else and left her alone, but it was scary while it lasted. I learned a lot about what actually helps versus what just makes you feel helpless." Lila absorbed this, another piece of Evan's history falling into place. Did they ever catch him? No, he just moved on, but she was vigilant about documenting everything, and it helped her feel less powerless, like she was doing something instead of just being a victim. I don't want to be a victim." "You're not. You're someone dealing with a shitty situation who's handling it as well as anyone could. But Lila, you also need to take this seriously. Derek is showing signs of not being able to let go. Most of the time, guys like that give up when they realize they're not getting a reaction. But sometimes they escalate. And I need you to promise me you'll be careful." "I'm always careful. I mean really careful. Park in well-lit areas. Tell people where you're going. Don't go places alone at night if you can avoid it. Vary your routine so he can't predict where you'll be. And if you ever feel unsafe, if you see him and something feels wrong, you call 911 first and me second, okay?" The intensity in his voice startled her. This wasn't casual concern. This was real fear for her safety. Lila reached across the table and took his hand. "I promise. I'll be careful." Evan squeezed her hand, then seemed to realize he was holding it, and pulled back, suddenly awkward. "Sorry, Mason asked me the other day if you were going to be his new mom, and I had to explain that adults can be friends without it being romantic. But then I worried maybe we were sending mixed signals, and I don't want you to think I'm trying to take advantage of your situation or—" "Evan," Lila cut him off gently. "You're not taking advantage. You're being a good friend, the best friend I've had in a long time, and I'm not reading anything into that except genuine kindness." He relaxed slightly. "Okay. Good. Because you've been through enough without having to navigate someone else's complicated feelings." "Do you have complicated feelings?" The question came out before Lila could stop it, curiosity overriding caution. Evan met her eyes, and something passed between them, acknowledgement of possibility, of timing, of things better left unsaid. "I think you're amazing. I think any guy who had you and screwed it up is an idiot. And I think right now what you need is friendship, not someone else wanting something from you. So that's what I'm offering, just friendship." "What if eventually I want more than friendship?" The words surprised her, even as she said them. "Then eventually we'll talk about it. But not now. Not when you're still processing Derek, still finding yourself again. You don't need another relationship. You need space to figure out who Lila is when she's not performing for someone else." He was right. Lila knew he was right. But part of her wanted to argue, wanted to lean into the possibility of connection with someone who actually saw her. Instead, she nodded. "You're a good man, Evan Brooks. I'm a practical man who's made enough mistakes to know that timing matters. And this isn't our timing." They moved on to easier topics. Mason's sleepover anxiety, a particularly bizarre client Lila was dealing with, Evan's plans to take Mason camping in the spring. The conversation flowed like it always did, comfortable and genuine. But underneath it, Lila felt the shift, the acknowledgement of something that might exist in the future but couldn't exist now. She left around 10, Evan walking her to her car and waiting until she'd locked the doors and started the engine before going back inside. The drive home was quiet, the city settling into its nighttime rhythms. Lila thought about Derek, about Evan, about the strange path that had led her from betrayal to friendship to something she couldn't quite name yet. Her phone buzzed at a red light. Unknown number. She almost didn't look, almost let it go to voicemail. But something made her check. Not Derek. A number she didn't recognize with a local area code. This is Rachel, Derek's sister. I know we've never met, but I wanted to reach out. Derek told me you two broke up and he's been acting erratic. I'm worried about him, but also worried about you. If he's bothering you, please know it's not okay and you should protect yourself. I can't control my brother, but I wanted you to know not all of us think his behavior is acceptable. Lila stared at the message, surprised by the solidarity from an unexpected source. She'd met Rachel once, briefly, at a family dinner where Derek had spent the entire time criticizing his sister's life choices. She typed out a response. Thank you for reaching out. I'm handling it, but I appreciate you saying something. That takes courage. The response came quickly. Derek doesn't handle rejection well. Never has. Please be careful. Lila saved the number, added the exchange to her evidence folder, and drove the rest of the way home with new information settling uncomfortably in her mind. Derek's own sister was warning her. That meant this was a pattern, a history, something beyond just one failed relationship. The next morning, Lila filed a police report. The officer was sympathetic but honest. Without overt threats or physical contact, there wasn't much they could do beyond documenting the incidents. But he gave her resources, contact information for victim advocates, advice on protective measures. She left the station feeling simultaneously validated and frustrated, like she'd done something important that might ultimately mean nothing. Work was a welcome distraction. She had a pitch meeting for a major client, months of preparation coming down to one presentation. Her team had worked late every night that week, refining slides and messaging and creative concepts. Now it was time to deliver. The pitch went perfectly. The client loved their approach, loved the energy Lila brought to the presentation, loved everything about the campaign concept. They signed on the spot, a 6-figure contract that would carry the agency through the next year. Lila's boss pulled her aside afterward, beaming. That promotion we discussed? It's official. Senior Creative Director, effective immediately. You've earned this, Lila. You've been on fire these last few months. Lila felt tears threatening and blinked them back. A promotion. Professional validation. Proof that choosing herself, walking away from Derek, rebuilding her life, all of it had been the right decision. She texted Kara first, who responded with approximately 40 exclamation points and a demand for celebration drinks. Then she texted her brother, who called immediately to congratulate her. And then, without overthinking it, she texted Evan. Got promoted today. Senior Creative Director. I'm kind of in shock. That's incredible. Congratulations. Mason and I are making you a celebratory dinner whether you want one or not. Tomorrow night. No arguments. I wasn't going to argue. What time? 6. And bring your appetite because Mason has decided to make you a cake, and I'm terrified of what that's going to look like. Lila laughed out loud in her office, earning curious looks from passing colleagues. She didn't care. For the first time in months, maybe years, everything felt like it was falling into place. Not perfectly, not without complications, but genuinely, authentically right. That night, Kara took her out for drinks at a wine bar that was too expensive and too trendy and exactly what the moment deserved. They toasted to new beginnings, to choosing yourself, to surviving heartbreak and coming out stronger. Lila told her about Derek cornering her, about the police report, about Rachel's warning. Kara's expression darkened. I don't like this. Him escalating right when you're succeeding, right when you're moving on. That feels intentional. What do you mean? He can't stand that you're thriving without him. Every good thing that happens to you is evidence that you didn't need him, that he wasn't the prize he thought he was. So he's trying to remind you he exists, trying to insert himself into your happiness and ruin it. That's a depressing way to look at it. It's an accurate way to look at it. Derek is a narcissist, Lila. You leaving him wounded his ego. You succeeding without him destroys the narrative he needs. That you'll fail without him. That you'll come crawling back. He can't accept reality, so he's trying to create chaos. Lila thought about that. About Derek's sister's warning. About the pattern of behavior that suggested this went deeper than one failed relationship. What do I do about it? Keep living your life. Keep succeeding. Keep being happy. Because that's the thing narcissists can't stand, when their victims thrive without them. And eventually, he'll have to accept that you've moved on, or he'll make a mistake big enough that the police can actually do something. That's not comforting. It's realistic, but Lila, you have people in your corner now. You have me, your brother, Evan, your whole team at work. You're not alone in this, and that matters. They drank more wine, told stories, laughed until Lila's sides hurt. She stumbled into a cab around midnight, pleasantly buzzed and genuinely happy, texting Evan a probably too enthusiastic message about how great life was. He responded the next morning with a simple, "Glad you had fun. See you tonight." The celebration dinner was chaos in the best way. Mason had indeed made a cake, lopsided and covered in what appeared to be an entire container of rainbow sprinkles, but made with such earnest effort that Lila felt her heart squeeze. Evan had cooked actual food, not just spaghetti, and the table was set with mismatched plates and a hand-drawn congratulations card from Mason that misspelled director, but perfectly captured his enthusiasm. They ate and talked and celebrated, Mason asking what a creative director did exactly and whether Lila would now be too important to help him with his science fair project. She assured him she'd never be too important for that, and his relieved smile was worth everything. After dinner, after Mason had gone to bed still riding the sugar high from too much cake, Lila helped Evan clean the kitchen. They worked in comfortable silence, the kind that comes from familiarity and trust. Evan washed, Lila dried, a domestic rhythm that felt easy and right. "I'm proud of you," Evan said, handing her a plate. "The promotion, handling Derek, building this whole new life, you're doing it. Some days it doesn't feel like I'm doing anything except surviving. Surviving is doing it, especially when the alternative is giving up or going back to what broke you." Lila dried the plate, set it in the cabinet. "Can I ask you something? About your ex?" "Sure. Do you ever regret it? The marriage, I mean? Or do you just see it as a mistake?" Evan thought about it, hands still in soapy water. "I don't regret Mason. And I don't regret learning what I learned about myself, about what I need in a partner. But do I regret marrying someone who wasn't capable of being a true partner? Yeah. I regret the time I wasted trying to make it work when it was never going to work. I regret the example it set for Mason, showing him that love looks like one person doing all the work while the other person checks out. I'm still unpacking that one in therapy." "You go to therapy?" "Have for years. Started after she left because I was a mess. Kept going because I realized I had a lot of stuff to work through. My brother's death, my parents' emotional unavailability, the way I was repeating patterns without realizing it. Best money I spend every month." Lila absorbed this. This man who was so comfortable admitting his own work in progress. Derek would have died before admitting he needed therapy, would have seen it as weakness rather than strength. "I should probably go to therapy," she said. "Probably. Most people should. It helps." "Will you send me your therapist's information or recommendations?" "Yeah, of course." He pulled his hands from the water, dried them on a towel. "Lila, can I tell you something? When I got that text from you that first night, I almost didn't go. I was tired. Mason was asleep. I had work in the morning. Every practical reason to ignore it and go to bed. But something made me get in my truck anyway, and I'm really glad I did." "Me too. You've become important to me. To Mason, too. He asks about you constantly, wants to know when you're coming over, includes you in his future plans like you're a permanent fixture. And I want to make sure that's okay with you, that you're not feeling pressured or obligated to be part of our lives just because I answered a wrong number." "I don't feel pressured," Lila said honestly. "I feel grateful. You and Mason are the best things that happened to me this year. You're proof that good people exist, that relationships don't have to be hard or painful or exhausting. You're just easy, in the best way." Evan smiled, warm and genuine. You're pretty easy too. Again, in the best way. They finished the dishes, moved to the living room with tea, talked until Lila noticed it was past 11 and she had work in the morning. Evan walked her out, same ritual as always, waiting until she was safely in her car before going back inside. But this time, as Lila drove away, she felt something shifting. Not urgently, not demandingly, but definitely there. A possibility. A future where maybe, when the timing was right, when she'd done the work of healing and rebuilding, there could be something more than friendship. Not now, but eventually. And for the first time since Derek had shattered her world, eventually felt like something to look forward to rather than something to fear. The weeks folded into months with a gentleness Lila had forgotten was possible. November arrived with early darkness and the kind of cold that made you grateful for warm spaces and warmer people. Derek's messages had slowed to a trickle, then stopped entirely after Lila's lawyer sent a formal cease and desist letter that outlined every documented incident and made it clear that further contact would result in legal action. Whether he'd actually backed off or simply found new ways to watch from a distance, Lila didn't know. But the silence felt like progress, like maybe he'd finally accepted that she wasn't coming back. Work consumed her in the best possible way. The new title came with new responsibilities, a team of creatives who looked to her for direction and inspiration. Lila found herself energized by the challenge, staying late not because she was avoiding home, but because she genuinely loved what she was building. Her apartment had transformed from a place to sleep into an actual home, walls covered with art she'd chosen, furniture arranged for her comfort rather than someone else's aesthetic, a life that reflected who she actually was instead of who she'd been trying to be. She'd started therapy in October, sessions with a woman named Dr. Martinez who had kind eyes and an unsettling ability to ask questions that cut straight to the heart of things. In their third session, Dr. Martinez had asked Lila why she thought she'd stayed with Derek so long, and Lila had given all the expected answers: investment, hope, love. Dr. Martinez had nodded and then asked a different question. What were you afraid would happen if you left? Lila had sat with that for a long moment before answering. I was afraid I'd be alone, that no one else would want me, that leaving would prove I was the problem all along. And now that you have left, what's actually happened? I'm not alone. I have friends, family, a life I actually like. And I wasn't the problem. I was just with someone who needed me to think I was. Dr. Martinez had smiled. So the thing you feared most didn't happen. How does that change your understanding of fear? The question had stayed with Lila for weeks, reshaping how she saw not just Derek, but every choice she'd made from a place of fear rather than desire. She was learning to trust herself again, to believe that her instincts were valid, that her needs mattered. It was slow work, painful work, but necessary work. Thanksgiving came with an invitation from James to come to Seattle for the long weekend. Lila almost said no out of habit. Holidays meant stress, meant performing, meant managing other people's expectations. But James had been clear, just family, nothing fancy, no pressure. So she'd bought a plane ticket and spent 4 days in her brother's warm, chaotic house with his wife and their 2 young kids who called her Aunt Lila and demanded she read them stories in voices that made them shriek with laughter. On Thanksgiving night, after the kids were in bed and the adults were picking at leftover pie, James had pulled her aside on the back porch where rain drummed steadily on the roof. You seem different, he'd said. Lighter. More like the sister I remember from before Derek. I feel different, like I'm finally waking up from something. Good. You deserve to be awake. You deserve to be happy. I'm getting there. James had put his arm around her shoulders, and they'd stood there in comfortable silence, watching rain turn the backyard into a reflection of streetlights and stars. Lila had felt grateful for family, for people who'd known her before she'd lost herself, who could remind her of who she'd always been underneath the performance. She'd texted Evan that night, a simple message. Grateful for you and Mason this Thanksgiving. Hope you had a good one. His response had come an hour later. Mason says he's grateful for you too. He put it on his list of things he's thankful for at school, right between video games and pizza. Lila had laughed out loud, earning a curious look from her sister-in-law. The fact that she'd made Mason's gratitude list, that she mattered to this earnest 8-year-old who measured the world in facts and sincerity, Felt like an honor she hadn't earned but would treasure anyway. December brought the kind of busy that bordered on overwhelming. Holiday campaigns at work, client parties, the endless social obligations that came with her new title. Lila navigated it all with a competence that surprised her, saying yes to things she wanted and no to things she didn't without the crushing guilt that used to accompany every boundary. She was learning that no was a complete sentence, that she didn't owe anyone an explanation for protecting her own peace. She hadn't seen Derek in weeks. No sightings at her usual coffee shop, no lurking in her parking garage, no mysterious appearances at places she frequented. Either the cease and desist had actually worked, or he'd moved on to someone else. Lila tried not to feel guilty about that last possibility. Whoever might be with Derek now wasn't her responsibility. She'd done what she could by documenting his behavior. Beyond that, she had to focus on her own healing. 2 weeks before Christmas, Mason's school held a winter concert. Evan had texted Lila about it casually, no pressure, but mentioned Mason had specifically asked if she'd be there. Lila had rearranged a client meeting to make it work, arriving at the elementary school auditorium to find Evan saving her a seat in the crowded rows of proud parents and grandparents. "You came," he said, and his smile was so genuinely pleased that Lila felt warmth spread through her chest. "I told Mason I would. I keep my promises." "I know you do." They sat together watching 8-year-olds in makeshift costumes sing off-key holiday songs with the kind of earnest enthusiasm that made even the most cynical adults smile. Mason spotted them in the audience and waved so vigorously he nearly fell off the riser, earning a stern look from the music teacher. Lila waved back, careful and small, and watched Mason's face light up with joy. After the concert, they waited in the lobby for Mason to emerge from backstage. Other parents milled around, chatting and congratulating each other's children. A few people nodded at Evan, clearly knowing him from previous school events. One woman approached with a friendly smile. "Evan, hi. I don't think I've met your wife." There was a beat of awkward silence before Evan responded smoothly. "This is my friend Lila." "My friend Lila, this is Jennifer. Her son Tyler is in Mason's class." "Oh, I'm so sorry." Jennifer looked mortified. "I just assumed you two looked so comfortable together. I thought..." "It's fine," Lila said, meaning it. "Easy mistake." Jennifer excused herself quickly, still apologizing, and Evan let out a long breath. That was awkward. Was it? Lila found she didn't mind being mistaken for Evan's partner. The assumption felt less like pressure and more like possibility. "I don't want you to think I'm telling people we're together or anything. I'm not. I've been very clear with the other parents that we're friends." "Evan, it's okay. Really. I'm not offended by someone thinking we might be a couple." He met her eyes, and something passed between them, acknowledgement, awareness, the thing they'd been carefully not discussing for months now. "You're not?" "No." "Are you?" "No." Mason burst through the backstage door then, still wearing his costume and talking a mile a minute about how he'd remembered all the words, and hadn't tripped even though the kid next to him had stepped on his foot. Lila listened to his enthusiastic recap, feeling Evan's presence beside her, solid and steady and increasingly difficult to categorize as just friendship. They went out for ice cream after, Mason's choice, sitting in a booth at a place that was too bright and too cheerful and exactly what an 8-year-old wanted. Mason sat next to Lila, showing her pictures on Evan's phone from the concert, pointing out all his friends and teachers. Evan watched them with an expression Lila couldn't quite read, something tender and careful and maybe a little scared. When Mason excused himself to go to the bathroom, Lila found herself alone with Evan across the sticky table, the noise of the ice cream shop creating a strange bubble of privacy. "He really loves you," Evan said quietly. "Mason, he talks about you constantly. You're part of his world now in a way that would be hard to walk away from." "I'm not planning to walk away. But what if you meet someone? Start dating, build a life that doesn't include random Tuesday dinners with me and my kid?" Lila set down her spoon, giving Evan her full attention. "Is that what you're worried about? That I'll disappear?" "I'm worried about a lot of things." He rubbed his hand over his face, tired and honest. "I'm worried that I'm starting to feel things that go beyond friendship. I'm worried that you might feel them too, but you're not ready, or that you don't feel them at all, and I'm misreading everything. I'm worried about screwing this up because what we have right now is good and important, and I don't want to lose it by wanting more. Lila's heart was pounding. They were finally saying it out loud, finally acknowledging what had been building between them for months. What if I told you I do feel things that go beyond friendship? Evan looked at her vulnerable and hopeful in a way that made Lila want to reach across the table and take his hand. Then I'd ask if you're ready for that. Really ready. Because I don't want to be your rebound, the guy who helped you through a hard time. I want to be the person you choose because you actually want me, not because I was there when Derek wasn't. You think that's what this is? Me using you as a Derek replacement? I don't know. Is it? Lila thought about how to answer that. She thought about the months since leaving Derek, the work she'd done in therapy, the life she'd rebuilt piece by careful piece. She thought about how Evan made her feel safe, seen, valued, and how that was different from the performance she'd maintained with Derek. She thought about the possibility of love built on friendship instead of chemistry, on showing up instead of grand gestures, on steady presence instead of dramatic highs and lows. No, she said finally. You're not a Derek replacement. You're everything he never was. You're kind and patient, and you listen when I talk instead of waiting for your turn to speak. You show up for people without keeping score. You make me feel like I matter just by existing, not because of what I can do for you. And yes, I met you at my lowest point. But staying in your life, wanting to be part of it, that's a choice I'm making from strength, not desperation. Evan's expression softened. So what do we do about it? I don't know. What do you want to do? I want to take you on an actual date. Just us, no Mason, somewhere we can talk without interruptions. I want to see if what we have translates outside of crisis and friendship. And if it does, if this is real, I want to build something with you that's intentional and healthy and nothing like what either of us had before. Lila felt tears threatening and blinked them back. I'd like that. All of that. Yeah? Yeah. But Evan, I need you to know something. I'm still figuring out who I am outside of Derek. Some days I feel strong and clear. Other days I'm a mess. I'm not perfect. I'm not healed. I'm just in progress. If we do this, you're getting someone who's still learning how to trust herself. I'm getting someone who's brave enough to leave what hurt her and rebuild from the ground up. I'm getting someone who shows up for my kid without expecting anything in return. I'm getting someone real, Lila. That's worth way more than perfect. Mason returned then, sliding back into the booth and launching into another story, completely oblivious to the conversation he'd interrupted. Lila caught Evan's eye across the table and saw him smile, small and private and full of promise. Their first official date happened a week later. Evan's neighbor, Mrs. Chen, agreed to watch Mason for the evening, and Evan picked Lila up at her apartment at 7, wearing dark jeans and a button-down shirt that made him look almost formal. He'd shaved, gotten a haircut, was clearly nervous in a way that Lila found endearing. "You look beautiful," he said when she answered the door. "You look terrified." "I am terrified. I haven't been on a first date in almost 10 years. I have no idea what I'm doing." "That makes two of us." He took her to a small Italian restaurant that wasn't trying too hard to be anything other than good food in a warm space. They ordered wine and pasta and talked about everything and nothing, work stories, childhood memories, the books they loved, and the movies they hated. It was easy, conversation flowing like it always did, but with an added layer of awareness. The way Evan's hand brushed hers when he reached for the bread. The way Lila caught herself watching his mouth when he talked. The possibility thrumming under every word. Over dessert, Evan asked the question Lila had been dreading. "Have you heard from Derek at all, since the cease and desist?" "Nothing. It's been almost 6 weeks of complete silence. Part of me is relieved. Part of me is waiting for the other shoe to drop." "Maybe there isn't another shoe. Maybe he's actually moved on." "Maybe. Or maybe he's just waiting, watching for an opening. I don't know if I'll ever really feel safe from him." Evan reached across the table and took her hand, deliberate and warm. "You know what I think? I think Derek took up enough of your time and energy when you were with him. He doesn't get to take any more now that you're free. Whatever he does or doesn't do, that's his problem. Your only job is to live your life and be happy. Everything else is just noise." Lila laced her fingers through his, feeling the calluses from years of manual labor, the steadiness of someone who meant what he said. "When did you get so wise?" "I'm not wise. I'm just a guy who made enough mistakes to learn what actually matters. And right now, sitting here with you, this matters. The rest is just details." He drove her home after dinner, walked her to her apartment door like a gentleman from a different era. They stood in the hallway, close but not touching, the air between them charged with possibility. "I had a really good time tonight," Lila said. "Me too. Can we do it again?" "I'd like that." Evan hesitated, then leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. Lila didn't pull away. She met him halfway, lips brushing in a kiss that was gentle and sweet and full of promise. Nothing demanding, nothing rushed, just connection and possibility, and the beginning of something new. When they pulled apart, Evan smiled. "I've been wanting to do that for months. Why didn't you?" "Because you needed time, and I needed to make sure I wasn't just another guy wanting something from you. I needed us to be friends first, real friends, so that anything else we built would have an actual foundation." "That's very mature of you." "Don't sound so surprised. I can be mature when the situation calls for it." Lila laughed, kissed him again because she could, and then reluctantly said goodnight. She watched him walk down the hall and disappear into the stairwell before going inside her apartment, leaning against the door with a smile she couldn't contain. The holidays arrived with their usual chaos. Lila spent Christmas Eve with Kara's family, accepted into their warm madness like she'd always been there. Christmas Day she spent with Evan and Mason, a quiet morning of pajamas and terrible coffee, and watching Mason open presents with unbridled joy. He gave Lila a card he'd made himself, carefully written in his best handwriting. "Thank you for being my friend and teaching me about planets and being nice to my dad." She'd cried reading it, much to Mason's alarm. Evan had pulled her aside while Mason was distracted by a new video game and said quietly, "He's not the only one grateful you're here. I'm grateful too, for both of you, for this." New Year's Eve found them at Evan's house again, too tired from the holiday rush to do anything elaborate. They'd put Mason to bed at 9 after he'd insisted he could stay up until midnight, but fell asleep on the couch by 8:30. Lila and Evan sat in the living room with cheap champagne and the ball drop on TV, talking about the year behind them and the year ahead. "This time last year, where did you think you'd be?" Evan asked. Lila thought about it. A year ago, she'd been with Derek, planning a New Year's party with people she didn't particularly like, performing the role of happy girlfriend while something deep inside her withered from neglect. "Honestly? I thought I'd probably be engaged by now. Derek had been dropping hints about proposing. I was dreading it and hoping for it in equal measure. And now? Now I'm sitting on your couch drinking champagne and feeling happier than I've felt in years. Now I have a job I love and friends who actually see me and a life that's mine. Now I'm dating a man who shows up for people and raises an amazing kid and makes me feel like I matter. It's not what I expected, but it's so much better than what I was settling for." Evan set down his champagne glass and pulled her closer, Lila settling against his side with comfortable ease. "This time last year, I thought I'd be doing exactly what I'd been doing, working, raising Mason, existing, but not really living. I thought that was just how life was supposed to be after someone leaves, quiet and small and safe. And now? Now I'm sitting here with someone who makes me want to be braver, someone who reminds me that life can be big again, that taking risks isn't the same as being reckless. Someone who fits into my life and Mason's life like she was always supposed to be there." They kissed as the countdown started on TV, pulled apart to yell Happy New Year with the crowd on screen, then kissed again, deeper and longer, a promise of things to come. January brought a return to routine, but everything felt different now. Lila and Evan were careful around Mason, not wanting to confuse him or move too fast. But the 8-year-old wasn't stupid. He'd asked Evan point blank if Lila was his girlfriend now, and Evan had said yes, and Mason had simply nodded like he'd expected this all along. "Good," Mason had said. "She makes you smile more, and she's way better at science than you are." They took it slow, building a relationship that incorporated Mason rather than working around him. Family dinners and movie nights, homework help and soccer games, the ordinary rhythm of lives intertwining. Lila kept her apartment, maintaining her independence even as she spent more nights at Evan's house than her own. They were writing new rules, building something that didn't follow anyone else's timeline or expectations. In February, Lila got a message from an unknown number. Her stomach clenched automatically, old fear rising before she could stop it. But when she opened it, it wasn't Derek. It was Rachel, his sister. I wanted you to know Derek's getting help. He started therapy after you filed that cease and desist, realized he had some things to work on. He's also seeing someone new, seems healthier this time. I know you don't owe him anything, but I thought you'd want to know he's not fixated on you anymore. You can breathe easier. Lila stared at the message for a long time, feeling a complicated mix of relief and residual anger, and something that might have been compassion for the man Derek could have been if he'd done this work 3 years ago. She showed it to Evan that night, and he'd read it carefully before responding. How do you feel about it? Relieved, mostly. I hope therapy helps him. I hope his new girlfriend gets a better version of him than I got. But also, I'm done carrying that weight. Whether he gets better or not, whether he's truly moved on or just found a new target, that's not my problem anymore. No, Evan agreed. It's not. Your only problem is what you're making me for dinner, because I'm useless in the kitchen and Mason refuses to eat anything green. Lila had laughed and kissed him and felt the last piece of Derek's hold on her life finally release. She was free. Truly, completely free. Spring arrived with the kind of hope that felt earned rather than expected. Lila's promotion was going well. Her team producing work she was genuinely proud of. Her apartment lease was up for renewal, and she had a decision to make. Keep the studio that represented her independence, or acknowledge that she spent most of her time at Evan's house anyway and stop pretending otherwise. She brought it up over dinner one Tuesday in March. Mason already in bed, she and Evan cleaning up the kitchen in their usual comfortable rhythm. My lease is up next month. I need to decide if I'm renewing. Evan's hand stilled in the soapy water. What are you thinking? I'm thinking I pay rent for a place I barely sleep in. I'm thinking it feels silly to maintain 2 households when we're together most of the time anyway. I'm thinking maybe it's time to stop being so careful about keeping everything separate. Are you saying you want to move in here? Lila heard the hope in his voice, the careful restraint of someone trying not to push. I'm saying I want to talk about it. Figure out if it makes sense for all of us, not just me and you. Mason should have a say in whether someone else lives in his space permanently. Mason asked me 2 weeks ago when you were moving in. I told him we hadn't talked about it yet, and he looked at me like I was being deliberately dense. He's a smart kid. He is, but Lila, I need to know you're doing this for the right reasons. Not because your lease is up, not because it's convenient. I need to know you're choosing this, choosing us, because it's what you actually want. Lila set down her dish towel and turned to face him fully. I'm choosing this because every morning I wake up in your bed, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. I'm choosing this because Mason is the best part of my day, and you're the person I want to tell things to, and this house feels more like home than anywhere I've lived in years. I'm choosing this because I love you, both of you, and I'm ready to stop being cautious and start being committed. Evan pulled her into a hug that lifted her slightly off her feet. I love you too, so much, and I promise we'll do this right, make space for your stuff, give you say in decisions, make this our home instead of just mine. Our home, Lila repeated, testing the words. They felt right. They felt true. She moved in over the course of a month, slowly integrating her belongings into their space. Her books joined the shelves, her art went on the walls, her clothes filled half the closet. Mason helped enthusiastically, giving her tours of good hiding spots and explaining the house rules he and Evan had established. Lila listened seriously, promised to abide by all regulations, and felt herself becoming part of something she'd never thought she'd have. A real family, chosen and built on foundation of showing up and staying. By summer, the life Lila was living bore no resemblance to the one she'd been trapped in a year ago. She woke up next to someone who loved her without conditions. She ate breakfast with a kid who asked impossible questions and believed in her ability to answer them. She went to work energized and came home to people who were genuinely happy to see her. She had friends, hobbies, a therapist who challenged her, and a family who accepted her. And on quiet nights when Mason was asleep and she and Evan sat on the back porch watching fireflies, Lila would think about that night in the coffee shop, about the wrong number that became the right person, about the stranger who'd shown up when she needed someone most and had stayed through everything that came after. What are you thinking about? Evan would ask, and Lila would smile. Just how different everything turned out from what I expected. How sometimes the worst thing that happens to you leads directly to the best thing. You think catching Derek cheating was the best thing? I think it gave me permission to leave, and leaving led me here, to you and Mason and this life. So yeah, in a weird way, it was the best thing, because it forced me to choose myself, and choosing myself led me to you. Evan would pull her closer then, kiss her temple, remind her that she'd always had the strength to leave. You just needed to believe it. I just showed up to remind you. One evening in late August, almost exactly a year after that first desperate text, Lila sat at the kitchen table helping Mason with his homework for the new school year. Evan was making dinner, music playing from the speaker, everything peaceful and ordinary and perfect. Mason looked up from his math worksheet and asked the question with the casual curiosity of a 9-year-old who didn't understand the weight behind it. Lila, are you going to marry my dad? Evan dropped a wooden spoon. Lila felt her breath catch. They'd talked about the future in abstract terms, about building a life together, but not specifically about marriage. Why do you ask? She said carefully. Because Tyler's mom got remarried last month and now Tyler has a stepdad, and I was thinking how you're kind of like my stepmom, except not officially, and I think it would be cool if you were officially. Plus, then you'd have the same last name as us, and people wouldn't look confused when I say you're my parent at school. Lila looked at Evan, who was staring at his son with an expression somewhere between panic and joy. Mason, that's a really big question. It's not that big, it's just asking if you love each other enough to want to stay together forever. Do you? Out of the mouths of children came the most profound simplicity. Lila thought about everything she'd learned in the past year. About fear and courage, about leaving and staying, about the difference between settling and choosing. She thought about how Evan made her feel safe enough to be vulnerable, strong enough to ask for what she needed, loved enough to believe she deserved good things. Yeah, she said, meeting Evan's eyes across the kitchen. I do. Me too, Evan said quietly. So you're going to get married? Eventually, Evan said, when we're ready. But Mason, marriage isn't something you rush into just because it sounds nice. It's a commitment you make when you're sure. And I'm sure about Lila, but we need time to make sure we're doing it right. But you will? Eventually? Yeah, buddy, we will. Eventually. Mason went back to his math, satisfied with the answer, while Lila and Evan looked at each other with understanding. Eventually wasn't today, wasn't tomorrow, but it was real. It was possible. It was the future they were building together, one day and one choice at a time. That night, after Mason was asleep and the house was quiet, Evan found Lila on the back porch where she'd developed a habit of sitting when she needed to think. He wrapped a blanket around her shoulders and sat down beside her. So, he said, marriage. Eventually. Is that proposal or just observation? Observation. When I propose, you'll know it. It'll be intentional and thought out and nothing like my first marriage where we basically did it because it seemed like the next logical step. Good. Because when you propose, I'm going to say yes. And I want to be choosing it for all the right reasons, not just because it's what people do. What are the right reasons? Lila thought about it. Because you make me better. Because I love who I am when I'm with you. Because you showed up when I needed someone, and you keep showing up every single day. Because you taught me what love is supposed to feel like. Steady and sure and safe. Because I want to spend the rest of my life building something real with you. Evan took her hand, pressed a kiss to her knuckles. Those are really good reasons. What are yours? Because you saved me too. I didn't even know I needed saving, but I was just going through the motions before you, existing but not living. You reminded me what it feels like to be excited about the future, to want more than just survival. You love my kid like he's yours. You make our house feel like a home. And when I think about the rest of my life, every good thing I can imagine has you in it. They sat in comfortable silence, hands linked, watching stars appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere in the city, Derek was living his own life, learning his own lessons, writing his own story. But he wasn't part of Lila's story anymore. He was just a chapter that had ended, making room for something infinitely better. A year ago, Lila had sent a text meant for her best friend to a stranger instead. She'd written 3 words, "He hurts me," and set in motion a chain of events that would completely reshape her life. That stranger had become her best friend, then her partner, then her family. That desperate moment had led to this peaceful one, sitting on a porch with someone who loved her, planning a future that felt earned and real and worth every hard step it took to get here. "I'm not hurting anymore," Lila said quietly, the realization settling over her like grace. "For the first time in years, I'm not hurting." "Good," Evan said simply. "You deserve to not hurt. You deserve all of this, the peace, the happiness, the love. You deserve everything." And finally, completely, Lila believed him. She'd chosen herself that night in the coffee shop when she'd decided to leave Derek. She'd kept choosing herself every day after, through the fear and uncertainty and hard work of rebuilding. And those choices had led her here, to a life she'd designed rather than settled for, to love that felt like home rather than performance, to a future that promised growth instead of diminishment. The wrong number had been exactly right. The stranger had shown up and stayed. And Lila Hart, who'd once measured her worth by someone who refused to value it, now knew exactly what she was worth. She was worth showing up for, worth choosing, worth loving with the kind of steadiness that didn't waver or demand or diminish. She was worth everything, and she'd never forget it again.